Hello people, Jeff the King here with Team Critical Trigger, and you can see a random assortment of cards, but there is reasons for these cards to be here. Today we're talking about hitting the numbers. You need to hit the right numbers to get your attack throughs and stuff, and why certain cards are important. This is probably only useful for beginners. Some of the cards I'll talk about maybe make a bit more sense for people, but more advanced play, but mainly this is aimed at people that don't realise what makes a card's attack important. So it's a bit more game theory, and hopefully this will provide useful to certain people. If you find this useful, please leave a like and comment and let me know. So to start off with, 8k vanilla boosters. Why are these good? Well, number one, you can obviously tell they're good because they have more attack than anything else. As a grade 1, if you ride on this on your first turn, it's pretty good because you're going to be able to attack with it and probably not have to boost it, because chances are in your first turn your opponent isn't going to guard, so chances are with him you'll get your attack through if you ride him turn 1. Also, 8k boosters. They can boost, and they have the highest boosting potential other than things like Young Pegasus Knight, where you put one in your soul and it goes up extra, which is good because you can, I don't have one, or he'd be here as well, you can consistently make him a 9k every turn with something that puts something in your soul every turn, such as Lohengrin, and that makes Lohengrin, because his effect also boosts him by 2, that makes Lohengrin 21k attacker every turn, which is good. Why is that good? Well, for instance, Draconic Overlord here, he's one of your 11k Vanguards. He has 11k attack, and to get through to him, you need obviously to go 11k. But hitting 21k is more important, because that means they have to put down more guard. They can put down a 10 guard and it'll be equal. If you only hit 20, a 10 guard would stop the attack. But, because he's 11, they have to put down 2 cards minimum, which means it's costing more cards. Costing more cards is always good, because your opponent has less cards to use to guard other attacks or to play in their turn. So, hitting 21k against these 11k Vanguards is very good. You always have to take into account that 11k Vanguards are out there. Most people will run them because a 20k isn't as much of a problem just because of their attack. Even if their effect's not that good, their 11k attack makes it good. This is why he's here. He's simply here just to show you guys that having him in the deck without the ride chain is completely not worth it, simply because of that 1k difference. That 1k, 1000 attack difference makes it so he's not worth running in a deck that doesn't have the ride chain. Sure, you could still use his effect and stuff, but what's the point? You've only got 10k, they can guard that very, very easily. The chances are they're never going to use it. There's just no point. That's not even taking into account, obviously, the fact that you won't have as many rear guards because you haven't got the ride chain's effects. So, that's him all talked about. So hitting 21, very good. This is why this guy's here. His effect is, when he attacks a Vanguard, he goes up by 2000. He does this in rear guard. This is a very underrated effect. This and the one that when it's boosted it goes up 2000 as well. These I like more than the Counterblast for a very specific reason. The Counterblast takes up a Counterblast. It's a very simple reason. The Counterblasts are good. Okay, I mixed my words up massively. The Counterblasts are good, but they take up a Counterblast. Unless you can unflip your damage, or you're specifically going for 21k, there is no point in using them. People do use the Counterblast when they haven't got anything better to put in, because one of these 8k dudes behind a Counterblast guy, you Counterblast, he hits 13, sorry, you boost with him, and that's 21. That is a number you want. 21 is a number you always want to get, but for no cost whatsoever other than hitting a Vanguard or the other one having a boost, means that this here hits 20. 20 is good. It's gonna force out only 1 guard from these, but for a rear guard, forcing out 1 guard is pretty damn good. As a Vanguard, not so good. As a rear guard, forcing out a single card is pretty nice. So this is a pretty good setup. Using guys like this is good for rear guards. If you want, for instance, in my Gold Paladin deck I have him as my Vanguard. Him as a rear guard, good. Him as a Vanguard, pretty appalling. So that's a nice field setup for me. I can have him attack, and it's forcing out as many guards as maximally possible with just, say I had this here, as maximally possible with these dudes, which is very good. This is why pretty much every deck you will see, if you're a beginner and you're still iffy about using these guys that have no effect, because you're like, ooh, they have no effect, That's why you will pretty much see every deck build on the internet, other than beginners builds, run 4 of these, or 4 of these, or 4 of whatever 8k for that deck is. More often than not, they'll also run 4 of these, which is the 10k. Now, why run 4 of him? Simply because he's 10k. When he's boosted, that makes very little difference because he's on 18. So a 9,000 would hit 17, and that makes no difference whatsoever because as soon as you hit 15, it means they can't use a 5,000 shield to stop your attack. As soon as you hit 15, that's good. So as soon as you hit 15, they have to use a 10,000 shield, which is better than wasting a 5,000 or 2 5,000s, obviously, which is 2 cards. So makes very little difference having 10k boosted by an 8k. No, very little difference. But the reason people run like 4 of 10k in every single deck is you're not always going to be able to boost. So him as a 10k by himself is 10,000. Say you're facing down this dude or any other Vanguard that's only at 10k. People do still run 10k Vanguards even though 11's very good because sometimes their effects needed. For instance, my Gold Paladins, I do run, let's see, him, Garmor. I run Garmor. He's only got 10,000, which means he's easier to hit, but his effect is broke. This is the only way I can say. Obviously, you can't read him effect, my camera quality is not that good, but when he attacks, if you've got 4 more damage, he goes up by 5,000, that's amazing, and the calling is very useful for my deck, so I still run him, which means this guy by himself with no boost can attack him, which means for just a single card presence on the field, you're forcing out a guard. Sure, only a 5,000 would stop it, but that's still a card they lose without any boost. As a 9,000, you wouldn't be able to do that. As a 9,000, you'd have to hit a trigger first and then do it. And an 8,000 is even worse. But these cards here, very low. 8,000, 7,000. Together though, their abilities, this card's ability activates, which when it boosts this, means you can start calling from your deck. Now I run these in my Gold Paladins. Not a lot of people do, simply because boosted, it only hits 15. But, again, you've hit 15 with 2 cards. So, it doesn't matter, because 15 and 18, literally, no difference. No difference whatsoever between 15 and 18, simply because, sure, he's better by himself. If I had this on by itself, useless. But 18, they have to use a 10 guard. 15, because equal to damage or less equals an attack, or more, sorry, equals a successful attack, means they have to use a 10k as well. So these two and these two, very large difference in their attacks, actually equal the amount of guard they have to use to actually stop it. So this is why I still think these Valkyries are very viable. And I have a Brutal Jack here, simply because he's a very good card. Now, he's 11 at grade 2, which means by himself he can start hitting these, which is very, very good. You have to counterblast for his attack, but this is why Nova Grapplers unflip. Their grade 2s can push through for attacks, which makes their grade 2 Genocide Jacks sometimes a higher option than using King of Sword, because he's only 11, which means King of Sword couldn't attack Dragonic Overlord by himself, but Brutal Jack could, and force out a guard. At the same time though, if you ride him on grade 2 for that one turn, he's getting through. There is no option about it, he is getting through. Him, boosted by this, that's 19, plus his effect he goes up by another 1,000, that's 24. Your opponent is not going to use that many guards in one turn, that early in the game, to stop his attack. When you ride him in grade 2, he gets through. There is no other ifs or buts about it. But other than that, on rear guard, he's 11k, which means he can push through more attacks than what your 10ks can, which makes him very good. This is why people like him, and why Nova Grapplers are known to be rather aggressive. So, that was just not too short a video, just a bit of a video on using the right numbers and what's important to hit. Hitting 15 for a rear guard, good. Being able to hit 11 instantly for a rear guard, very good. Hitting 20 for a rear guard, very, very good. That's not even a boosted yet. Very, very good. So these are the numbers you want to be hitting. Having at least one Vanguard, multiple copies of it, but having at least one Vanguard with 11 in your deck, a very important matter. This is why people run Dragonic Overlord, obviously, even without his effect. This is why people run Dragonic Overlord for an effect and for the boost, why people run Azure Kaiser, why people run Brutal Jack in Nova Grapplers. why Spectral Duke and ride chains that give you 11k Vanguards are run, because the 11 is very useful. Obviously you can run other things like 10ks as long as their effects are useful, but the people will most of the time, when they're running a successful deck, have an 11k Vanguard in there. So it's just a video to show all beginners what numbers are important and why using certain cards are important. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope it's been informative. Please leave a like, please comment, please subscribe if you haven't already, and goodbye.